this point onwards, we will know whether
the next generation, your children and grandchildren, do better.
Hardships, sleeping in corridors, and enjoying hydrogen.
King Jofi Jofa, ruler of the kingdom of Zamunda. Everything is headed to America, all coming to America. But before we go to America, we've got some unfinished business in Nairobi, Kenya. Last week, Al-Shabaab terrorists struck out the heart of Nairobi, Kenya, the Westgate shopping mall, leaving tens of people dead. This week, security operatives scoured the crime scene in search of evidence. On Saturday, President Barack Obama called on the lower chamber of Congress to end the government shutdown while unconditionally approving a federal budget. In his weekly broadcast, the U.S. president was once again on the offensive.
As I made clear to them this week, there's only one way out of this reckless and damaging shutdown. Pass a budget that funds our government, with no partisan strings attached. The Senate's already done this, and there are enough Republicans and Democratic votes in the House of Representatives willing to do the same and end this shutdown immediately. Unfortunately, the far right of the Republican Party won't let Speaker Boehner give that bill a yes or no vote. Take that vote. Stop this farce. End this shutdown now. The American people don't get to demand ransom in exchange for doing their job. Neither does Congress. They don't get to hold our democracy or our economy hostage over a settled law. They don't get to kick a child out of Head Start if they don't agree to take her parents' health insurance away. It's not how our democracy is supposed to work. That's why I won't pay a ransom in exchange for reopening the government. And I certainly won't pay a ransom in exchange for raising the debt ceiling. For as reckless as a government shutdown is, an economic shutdown that comes with default, with America not paying its bills, would be dramatically worse.
President Obama has already taken a hit from the shutdown. A trip to Bali for an Asian Pacific Economic Council summit, which ended on Tuesday, was cancelled. Another, which would have taken him on a trip to Brunei, Malaysia and the Philippines, was also cancelled. All of this to deal with the government shutdown. 3 days into the shutdown, Republican House Speaker John Boehner left talks with President Obama, complaining that Democrats will not negotiate to end the government shutdown. Both parties accusing each other of frustrating the road to progress.
Reiterated one more time tonight that he will not negotiate. We've got divided government. Democrats control the White House and the Senate. Republicans control the House. We sent 4 different proposals over to our Democrat colleagues in the Senate. They've rejected all of them. I would hope that the President and my Democrat colleagues in the Senate would listen to the American people and sit down and have a serious discussion about resolving these differences.
Mr. Speaker, will there be a default? Can you guarantee there won't be a default?
Democrats won't negotiate. What the Speaker has to accept is yes for an answer. He said that he wanted to go to conference. He sent us something from the House that he wanted to go to conference. So I thought that we'd thrown him a lifeline. I said, fine, we'll go to conference. All we want you to do is open the government. And I went through a litany of things that we would be happy to talk about, or anything else he wanted to talk about. We have the debt ceiling staring us in the face, and he wants to talk about a short-term CR. I thought that they were concerned about the long-term fiscal affairs of this country. And we said, we are too. Let's talk about it. My friend John Boehner, I repeat, cannot take yes for an answer.
The shutdown has forced hundreds of thousands of federal workers to stay home without pay, while monuments such as the Statue of Liberty have been barricaded and national parks closed.
There was a little bit of planning already to know that we were going to make less money, be compensated less this year. So 3 days I can survive, but 2 weeks or more we start worrying about where the mortgage payment is going to come from.
I've tried to maximize my money as much as possible, so I do buy in bulk to save money. It's very difficult for me to, save up, pay for bills, in a forward balancing process, and just trying to make sure that all my bills are met by the end of the month. Saying is that the government is safe, it's job security, and the benefits are good. Well, it puts a different perspective when you're furloughed in twice in less than 6 months, and you're not being paid, and your job is dependent on what Congress does.
And with the date for a vote on raising the debt ceiling approaching, some Republican pragmatists now think passing a resolution to vote on a new spending bill is no longer achievable. Mr. Obama is refusing to negotiate with Republicans over the budget issues until they pass a temporary bill to open the government and agree to raise the $16.7 trillion U.S. statutory borrowing limit, without which Washington could default on its debt for the first time ever, starting on the 17th of October. The crisis is rooted in the Tea Party's campaign to overturn Obamacare, the president's principal domestic political achievement, key portions of which came into force on Tuesday. More broadly, the shutdown is the most serious crisis yet in a series of rolling ideological skirmishes between Democrat Obama and House Republicans over the scope of the U.S. government. Consultants' macroeconomic advisors said it would slow growth recorded at a 2.5% annual pace in the second quarter. A 2-week shutdown would cut 0.3 percentage point off gross domestic production.
Kenya's worst terror incident since the U.S. Embassy bombings in 1997 in Nairobi has left so many unanswered questions. Writing a narrative of just what happened has to be the equivalent of closing the Pandora box. But we all want answers. We need answers, and in quick time.
On the first day of the month, Kenyans gathered around the country to mourn their loss. It was the end of 3 days of national mourning. 44 million Kenyans had buried their differences, religion and political bias put aside, to mourn Kenya's worst terror incident in 16 years.
And I want to be categorically clear. We will stay there until they bring order in their nation. If their desire is for Kenya to pull out of Somalia, my friends, all they need to do is what they should have done 20 years ago, which is put their house in order, and Kenya will come back to Kenya. As much as I thank everybody for the contributions they have made during that difficult time, we will also be putting in place a commission of inquiry to establish if we could have done things better going forward, to see where there were lapses.
More than a week after the incident at the Westgate shopping mall, the Red Cross says at least 39 people still remain missing, despite the government's claim that everyone had been accounted for. As security operatives go through the rubble, more bodies have been found. Hours after the interdenominational service, politicians from Parliament, National Security and Defense and Foreign Relations committees visited the mall, picking their way through shattered glass and pools of congealed blood in the main hall.
One thing that this has taught us is Kenyans will remain united under any circumstances, and we laud every Kenyan for that. We also want to tell the Kenyan people that we as Parliament, as elected representatives, will do everything possible to ensure that we come to the truth of this matter, to understand the history of this matter, to understand the actors in this matter, and to understand the failures in this matter. Kenyans will not invest in this country and allow foreigners to come and destroy their livelihoods, to destroy their investments, and to destroy their way of life.
Terrorism is a common enemy for all of us. And from today, we must also re-examine the refugee camps that have come even closest to the city. We have been very kind to these people, but they are hitting us back.
We are telling UNHCR the time has come that these people must go, and they must go to the area or any other country who thinks that they can do that job. Let them carry these people.
The aftermath of the attack has meant huge economic losses for shop owners. Days after the attack, pictures surfaced on social media showing looted shops, including a luxury jewelry shop showing shelves cleaned of goods.
I know my stock is not there. I've been told already by somebody who was there before, but I'm going to see what is part of the stock, how is my shop, how are the things there. We have some personal things to collect, and my girls run away, left the bags, so we want to collect their bags, their IDs, or all this.
I'm not very confident because I hear from other shops they have been looted, so I don't know.
There's a really bad stench in there of the dead bodies and blood all over the place. So the smell in there is really bad. That's why they're advising us to wear masks and go in.
It has not been only the shopkeepers at the Westgate Mall who have suffered losses. Somalis living in Kenya have borne the brunt of verbal attacks following the Somali-based Al-Shabaab's claim to sponsoring the attack. It's an easy calm that pervades the Somali community in Kenya.
Right now I'm really thanking to the leaders of this country, Kenya, because they told everyone, they told the Kenyans that Somalis are not terrorists and terrorists are not Somalis, and terrorists even they do not even represent the teaching of Islam. So right now, one of the agendas of Al-Shabaab is to cause misunderstanding globally in East Africa.
Since Westgate tragedy happened, things have not been good. People are very afraid. Whenever it's in the evening at 6, everybody runs to his home. So our business is very badly now. It has affected very much.
The investigation into the attack has been a complex puzzle. Kenyan police now believe that only between 4 and 6 armed men, not 10 to 15 as earlier thought, conducted the attack. Police Chief David Kimayo told Kenyan television station KTN none of them managed to escape from the building after the attack, implying that they were killed in the confrontation. Witnesses in the mall described how the fighters stormed the complex midday on that Saturday when it was crowded with shoppers, firing from the hip and hurling grenades at shoppers and staff. CCTV camera footage from one part of the mall showed only 4 young men ambling around with AK-47 rifles in hand. Mr. Kimayo also confirmed that the wanted British white widow Samantha Litwaite, reported to have been one of the attackers, was not involved, contradicting Kenya's foreign minister's account. But Kenya's war on terror is being fought on different fronts. On Saturday, U.S. forces captured Abu Anas al-Libi, a long-sought al-Qaeda operative indicted in the 1998 bombings of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. In Tripoli, a source close to Libi told AFP he had been kidnapped close to his home after dawn prayers by a group of armed men. Libyan security services said they were unaware of any kidnapping or arrest of the man. Liby's reported capture was part of apparent twin raids by U.S. Special Operation Forces after U.S. Navy SEALs staged a separate assault on a senior Al-Shabaab militant leader in southern Somalia. Though it was unclear whether he was captured or killed, the U.S. government had put a reward of up to $5 million in Libya, who is on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list and was found under the name Nazir Abdul Hamid al-Rageh.
I hope the perception is in the world that people who commit acts of terror and who have been appropriately indicted by courts of law, by the legal process, will know that the United States of America is going to do everything in its power that is legal and appropriate in order to enforce the law and protect our security.
Kenya's decision not to withdraw its troops following the Westgate attack has been met by Al-Shabaab fury. The Islamist group in a website announced further attacks in the coming weeks, threatening Kenya's economy, which is heavily dependent on tourism.
It is a long way to peace in Damascus, but importantly, the first blocks towards progress have been laid. Syria's chemical weapons stockpile must and shall be destroyed, according to the UN Security Council. But is good enough for the Council, good enough in ending the crisis? The unanimous vote by the 15-member Security Council capped weeks of intense diplomacy between Russia and the United States. It was based on a deal between the two countries reached in Geneva earlier this month, following an August 21st sarin nerve gas attack in a Damascus suburb that killed hundreds.
I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now. Will those in favour contained of the document or resolution contained in document S/2013/575 please raise their hand. The result of the voting is as follows. The draft resolution received 15 votes in favour, so the draft resolution has been adopted unanimously as Resolution 2118 of 2013.
One provision of the resolution, described by Council diplomats as significant, formally endorses a plan for a political transition in Syria, agreed on at an international conference in Geneva in June 2012. The United States and France hailed this as a diplomatic victory, even if the resolution appeared watered down in the end.
Our aim was also to hold the Assad regime publicly accountable for its horrific use of chemical weapons against its own people on August 21st. And this resolution makes clear that those responsible for this heinous act must be held accountable. We are here because actions have consequences. And now, should the regime fail to act, there will be consequences.
Ce soir, dans le drame syrien, le Conseil de sécurité mérite enfin son nom.
The resolution does not allow for automatic punitive action in the form of military strikes or sanctions if Syria does not comply. At Russia's insistence, Friday's resolution makes clear a second council decision would be needed for that.
Is inadmissible. This does not mean, however, that one can usurp the right to accuse and pass verdicts. All the incidents associated with the use of chemical weapons, by whoever that might be in Syria, must be investigated in a professional and unbiased manner and then examined by the UN Security Council exclusively on the basis of facts rather than allegations and assumptions.
A major sticking point to the resolution had been Russia's opposition to writing it under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, which covers the Council's authority to enforce its decisions with measures such as sanctions or military force. Russia has made clear, however, that it would not support the use of force against Assad's government, a major importer of Russian weapons. Syria's ambassador to the United Nations said Turkey, Saudi Arabia, France, Qatar, and the United States must abide by the resolution and be held accountable if they continued assisting the rebels. US President Barack Obama earlier called the draft UN resolution a potentially huge victory for the international community and described it as legally binding, verifiable, and enforceable. But Mr. Obama's critics said the resolution deflected attention from Obama's wavering on the Syrian conflict. As a precursor to the UN vote, the 41-member Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons approved a decision in The Hague on Friday laying out procedures to rapidly verify and destroy Syria's chemical weapons stockpile.
After an unexpected last-moment delay, our Executive Council has met, and at 12:38 this morning, The Hague time, has adopted the decision for an accelerated program by the OPCW to destroy Syria's chemical weapons. The good news is there is a decision. The decision is effective immediately, and we expect to have an advance team on the ground in Syria by next week.
So on Tuesday, inspectors headed off to Syria,
Damascus, there were mixed reactions following the UN Security Council's decision portraying the deeply divided politics playing out in Syria.
التدخل الخارجي ممكن يعقد المشكلة أكثر. فنتأمل إنه هلا جنيف 2 يكون هو الوسيلة للوصول للحل.
يعني ضوء في النفق الذي دخلت فيه الأزمة السورية، نتفائل في سوريا نحن أن هذا سيؤتي ثماره. سوريا أعتقد أنها مخلصة في اتخاذ قرارها بالتخلص من الأسلحة الكيميائية، وسنبقى في سوريا نتطلع إلى أن تتخلص كل المنطقة من هذه الأسلحة بأن تنضم مصر.
هذا القرار انتصار للدبلوماسية الروسية لأنه لم يأتي فعلا على أسس البند السابع لمجلس الأمن كما أرادت أمريكا وأعوانها بريطانيا وفرنسا.
The United Nations says more than 100,000 people have been killed in the civil war after the government tried to crush pro-democracy protests, and more than half of Syria's 20 million people need help.
Mr. Taylor, will you please rise? For the foregoing reasons, the appeals chamber affirms the sentence of 50 years imprisonment imposed by the trial chamber, orders that this judgment shall be enforced immediately pursuant to 119 of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence, orders in accordance with 109 of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence that Charles Gankett Taylor remains in the custody of the Special Court for Sierra Leone pending the finalization of arrangements to serve his sentence. Mr. Taylor, you may be...
Charles Gyamfi Taylor on his way out to jail. The UN-backed appeals court on Thursday upheld Liberian's ex-president Charles Taylor's 50-year sentence for arming rebels during Sierra Leone's brutal 1990s civil war. 65-year-old Mr. Taylor was found guilty in 2012 of supporting rebels from neighboring Sierra Leone who waged a campaign of terror during a civil war that claimed 120,000 lives between 1991 and 2002 in exchange for blood diamonds mined by slave labor. The former West African strongman is to start his sentence immediately. He was probably in a British jail. Following the confirmation of his sentence, I got a reaction from a victim-turned-activist in Nigeria saying, confirmation of Charles Taylor's 50 years jail term means that no matter how highly placed you may be today, one day you will be called to give an account. I thank George Delaga King for standing on the path of truth. David Anyele. Right. That's the way the cookie crumbles for Charles Taylor. As for me, I am on my way to Zamunda. I'm sure you all had yourself a wonderful time. You learned something very important. You have yourself a fabulous time. And remember, in everything you do, keep it global. I am Auro Obo and I am out of here. But good grief! I can still get you guys. Try the fire eater now.
And the security forces, this is how far they have come. From this point onwards, we will know whether...
The next generation, your children and grandchildren, do better.
Hard shifts, sleeping in corridors, and enjoying hydrogen.